Murder trial update. Okay, this week I was in Flower Bluff with some of my homeless friends. And my homeless friends are not stupid. Albert, the older man, he reads the Corpus Caller every day, Corpus paper. But he told me this week, he said, "Oh, John, that trial's coming up for that person who shot the innocent young teenager while he was playing video games." Okay, and this happened. This was a tragic death that occurred last year on Waldron Road in Flower Bluff. That happens to be one of the areas where you kind of see me a lot. In those little spots where sometimes I'm with the homeless guys under the trees or whatever. That main road is called Waldron Road. Or the high school my kids went to is also off of that road. It's a fine road. So in the public mind, most of the public was told that this black man by the name of Parrish Richardson, young black man, 20s I guess, that somehow he went into an apartment and there was a young boy on Valentine's Day just playing video games. That's the image I had. Remembering when my kids used to play Nintendo. And this young kid that was playing video games was brutally murdered by a black man. Now you got to understand how when you create an image, which you have admitted now, I'm going to read the statement from the DA's office, which you primarily admitted was a false image. I'll read the statement right from the screen in a second. So everybody pretty much assumed that this was a, bad thing. That he's playing the video games. Now, it's the fourth day of the trial, and it looks like the prosecutor by the name, the person working for Mark Gonzalez, Pena, Prosecutor Ronaldo Pena, brought up testimony from the car driver. Now, this is the prosecutor who is trying to make this case of murder, not manslaughter. The case he is trying to make is this black man shot an innocent young man. All shooting and killing is wrong. And it wasn't an accident. That's called manslaughter. It wasn't, but it was an intentional shooting of a kid. That's how you played this in the public mind, with race involved. Prosecutor Ronaldo Pena brought up testimony from the driver. The driver said Parrish Richardson, told him he didn't mean to shoot Richard. He didn't mean to shoot Richardson while driving away from the apartment. They got the name wrong. He didn't mean to shoot. Richardson said that was true. He didn't mean to shoot the kid by the name of Eccles. How do you know that you shot him, the prosecutor is asking. Now, the prosecutor just got testimony from the car driver that Parrish Richardson stated to the car driver, "Man, I didn't mean to shoot the kid. I didn't mean to shoot Eccles." The prosecutor brought that testimony up, who is claiming in this case that it wasn't an accident, or claiming in the case that he purposefully shot the kid. That testimony alone from the DA's office and the lips of the prosecutor would warrant a not guilty on a murder charge. Do you not even see that? And then it also seems as if that's the main part I wanted to bring up. The prosecutor, in trying to convict this kid, and I think he's probably going to get off, because this other black kid by the name of Richardson, the victim was the name of Eccles. The the defendant, is called Richardson. But he basically said there was a drug deal, they were going to sell some pot, and that when he went up to the room, he was going to sell the pot, and that Eccles was not just some young kid. The testimony from Richardson was that this kid Eccles was like part of whatever was going on, not just some innocent kid. The prosecution also had stated, we're going to show how this young kid was just that. And it seems as if they never showed that, meaning they are kind of painting a false picture that some young white boy just playing video games was shot by a black man. And even my friend Albert had that picture in his head. And it's possible that they know that that's a false picture. And that's a false picture that involves races of people. Now, this Richardson defendant said when he went to the room, he was going to buy the pot, and that Eccles asked him if he had any pills. Like he wanted to buy some pills. There's a lot of problems with drugs where I live. And Richardson claims he went back to the car, was going to get the pills, and that the purchase of the marijuana, that the guy said, you're giving me fake money. And Richardson claims he looked at like Eccles, like we're going to have to get this guy, he's trying to screw us or whatever it is. Now that's the testimony from Richardson. It sounds somewhat believable to me. Why? Because the prosecutor, from what I'm reading, during this trial, they were going to bring up how it was just an innocent kid playing a game. Now, don't get me wrong. That boy should have never been murdered. But the fact that the prosecutor by the name of Pena, he himself brought up the testimony from the driver of the car. Mr. Pena brought up the testimony that Richardson did not intend to shoot or kill Eccles. That would be something a defense would bring up. And maybe it's good that the prosecutor exposed something that they maybe didn't want to expose. And maybe it's good that the picture that was painted, that even my friend Albert said, oh, it was that black guy that murdered that some kid playing video games on Valentine's Day. You make sure you don't present a false picture. So, being it's the fourth day of deliberations, according to this case I'm reading, it looks as if when, normally if you get in a prosecution, they might still convict this young black man. I read his testimony, and he basically, it does look like he's telling the truth, because he got down into the car and said, I didn't mean to shoot him. And he wasn't sure if he did shoot him. He assumed that, yeah, maybe I did. And then the boy died. Now, the proper charge on that would have been not a charge where you said he intended. Because the words from his own mouth show you that he did not intend. And you, the DA's office, you had that testimony. Because one of your prosecutors, it opened that. I would not be able to and the reason it's 4 days, it's not a hung jury yet. They're going to come back and resume deliberations Monday. Now, I'm not defending murder or killing or anything. I'm saying you speak the truth in these courts. The conviction, I spoke about that case. I believe you railroaded that carpenter out of Kingsville. And I never saw a case that bad. There was a woman in Bishop, Texas. This is this county. And Nueces County worked. We used to help aid Bishop. Though Bishop was not far department, Kingsville is Clayburgh. Bishop is Nueces County. But it was very close to Kingsville. And Bishop does not have, a paid fire department. Corpus Christi does, but they have a volunteer. But we had volunteers and a paid department, which I was on the paid department. So oftentimes we would do mutual aid over to the city of Bishop, which was fine. Wrecks on the highway and all. But there was a lady in Bishop who went to Kingsville to a garage sale. I want you to see the incompetence of this region. And when she went to and I know Kingsville well, I went to garage sales in Kingsville. And this Bishop woman went to Kingsville to a garage sale. And talking to the husband and wife, or the boyfriend and girlfriend, said, "Oh, you do carpentry work?" And he said, "Yes, I do. I'm a fix-it man or whatever. I do carpentry work." So the woman from Bishop actually was the one who instigated for him to come the next day to do some work at her house in Bishop. Now the man went, did the work in Bishop, whatever carpentry work he had to do, and he was doing it already, that he was not soliciting to go to her place, she solicited for him to come. Then, the next day, he got a knock on the door in Kingsville. He did the work in Bishop, finished the job, whatever it was, and went home to Kingsville. Now, the Colder Times reported that when the cops in Kingsville knocked on this man's door, he answered the door and said, "Yeah, what do you want?" Now, he might have had like a burglary record in the past, nothing about rape or anything. So he answered the door and said, "What?" Figuring, oh, they're showing up on like a misdemeanor thing, maybe, I don't know, he didn't pay probation 20 years ago. I don't know what was in his mind. They said, "We have a warrant for your arrest." "My arrest for what?" "Raping a woman in Bishop." And his response was, if that effing bitch is going to do something like that, his response was, "You're going to have a murder charge on your hands." Telling that to cops, then he ran. Now, who responds that way? Who off the cuff responds like that? That's suspicious. That's suspicious. Okay. Then the case went, the arrest was made, and the woman claimed that when he was at her home in Bishop doing the work, that he then proceeded to rape her. And during the rape, she was calling out to her Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Now, if she's lying and put his name, as she was calling out to Jesus Christ, she claimed that this man said to her, "What can your Lord and Savior do for you now?" It sounded so strange. Then her story was, he raped her, assaulted her, kidnapped her, and began this long drive to Mexico. I've made the drive from Kingsville or Bishop to Mexico. Then as he was going into Mexico, she convinced him to not kidnap her, flee the country, live in Mexico? She said she convinced him to turn the vehicle around, go all the way back to Bishop, drop her off, and that he went home to his house in Kingsville. That story doesn't sound true. That story does not sound true to me. Now, when I first heard that, before I heard because later the man would say, the only reason I could imagine she did that, before I heard what this man's response was, I was thinking, the first thing that came to my mind as I looked at that, I thought, I bet that woman propositioned him. And if he said, dear, I'm not going to do that. Because in this story of Joseph in the Bible, that's the one particular case where a woman claimed false rape. There's something in the sinful nature, the human psyche, that if you want sex with a person, it was Potiphar's wife who wanted to have sex with Joseph, particularly the story in Genesis. And because he denied having sex with her, then she charged him with rape. So that God gives us a little understanding on that. I thought, as I read the other stuff, then later they did interview this man. And he said, he told the investigators, the only thing I could imagine is she asked me to sleep with her And I had told her no. But I had thought that before I even heard that statement. Then the case went to court, which was really questionable about what I just explained. And this local region said the DNA, oh, she claimed that he made her take a shower. That somehow, like the shower, would deteriorate the DNA. If you have a fresh case of intercourse and you take a shower, you're either going to wash it all away or you're going to get a DNA match. You're not going to get a degraded DNA like a John Benet Ramsey thing, checking a fingernail 30 years later. You're going to either get a match or not. But her story was he then made her take a shower. Much of the story sounded fake to me. And then in the trial, he did not speak up for himself and tell that story. They told him, just be quiet. This is this region. They convicted him. And then there was a question, did the DNA match? And this local media actually reported it wasn't really 100% match, but it was male DNA. It could have matched, so many, 20% of the male population, and it was male DNA. You either get a match from a rape kit right the night of the rape, or you get no match. That man's in prison. I question that whole case. And I just question it because of what I told you. And it's highly likely that that whole thing was fake. That whole thing was fake. Because, look, you don't respond to cops after you just raped a woman. She claimed you took her all the way to Mexico. She claimed that she convinced you, and then as he was on top of you raping you, he made the statement. As you were calling out to God, he made the statement, what can your Lord and Savior Jesus Christ do for you? That sounded like she was just a scorned person. If I'm wrong, then justice was done. But if I'm right, you have wreaked a judgment on this county. You say, well, but John, that's happened in other places. Yes, but we now call the kingdom in. Do you understand anything? Arise, O God, and judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all nations. When it's brought before, then you reap a judgment. I would simply say, I had no plan on speaking. The fact that this prosecutor, in the current case of Paris Richardson and the death of Eccles, and you are in that court insisting that it was not an accidental shooting because it's a murder charge, and the prosecutor himself had the testimony from the kid driving the car that when Richardson got in the car, he said, I didn't mean to shoot him. So it was a non-intentional shooting. So this is one of the first of probably a multiple array of cases that they're going to be problematic in this county. You do what is just. When you investigated that, and then you had that statement from that kid in the car, not that Mr. Richardson, a black man, came running down after shooting some innocent video kid player, but he came down, you saw what the scenario was, you said you were going to show evidence, the case is now 4 days old, and you were going to show evidence it was an innocent kid playing video games, probably was different. Not that he deserved to be killed, but you don't paint false pictures, especially with the mindset of a black man with a young boy on Valentine's Day. Even Albert, my friend, fell for that type of reporting.